Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Wisdom Exchange number 15. Today, we're going to talk about the scarcity versus abundant mindset. And we're going to go through Maslow's hierarchy. If you're not familiar, we've been through in a previous Wisdom Exchange, but this is going to cover psychological needs, safety needs, social needs, esteem needs, and then self actualization. And so, how can we go from a scarcity mindset, just trying to be very controlling in our life and chasing kind of like a unconscious animal, to more of an abundance mindset? And I've posted on transactional analysis before, which is the complex parent and child relationship, not just between parents and children, but also within ourselves. So, a lot of interesting things to cover. We're going to also talk about breaking things like shame, blame, guilt, how fearlessness also comes into this. And so, this whole package of moving from scarcity to abundance, from unconsciousness to consciousness, and from a parent child relationship to an adult relationship, both external relationships and our internal relationship within us. So, a lot to cover today. I'm very excited. And so, let's just go for it. Um, Again, if you never watched yesterday's live stream, watch that as well. We went through looking into your personality in depth and how you could just gain more about more insight about your personality as well. And I've included a personality package that you can look in the description. So let's jump into Maslow's hierarchy, which is going to be super interesting. If you haven't seen it already, I'll give a quick example. So Maslow's hierarchy, the way it is, there was a guy called Maslow, and I think he was at ENFG as well. He was a psychologist, and he basically showed human progression. So imagine you in your life, you can imagine as we go through this, where you've been, or maybe where your family has been, and where you're going towards, and actually how that influences your background thoughts in life, right? So you can start to see how this starts to affect our psychology. So, physiological needs, you can imagine if we're hunter gatherers in the savannah, like we looked in Wisdom Exchange 1, in that gorge in, I think it was Tanzania, we're going to try to meet our psychological and physiological and safety needs. So, our nutrition, our water, air, sleep, shelter, clothing, temperature, reproduction, all of our basic needs, animalistic nature. And this is going to be all unconscious. We're just going to be like animals. We might fight over for these things. And so that's really at the bottom of our line. We're then going to move up to that orange zone of safety needs, which is really that security, stability, predictability. Money might come in, law might come in, freedom from fear. And that, again, you can start to see the psychological link between money being a safety net and us chasing money in an unconscious setting, right? Just like we're chasing food unconsciously, we can be chasing money unconsciously because we have fear driving us. So it's important to understand our relationship to money and property and protection. And we'll get into that a bit deeper. Social needs. Again, this can be unconsciously about giving and receiving affection, intimacy, friendship, tenderness, love, and belongingness. So you can see that how we go into relationships later in life, how this can try to satisfy a social need again, either unconsciously or consciously. And once these are met, we're then going to look for esteem, when we're looking for self esteem. And we're going to look into this soon about the South Asian diaspora context and how this plays into our self esteem, about looking for mastery, achievement, right? Chasing prestige, reputation and status, competence, independence. So going from school all the way to work and achieving accolades, right? But the real game changer comes when we've seemingly gone through that in the unconscious state, and now we're at the self fulfillment area, growth, unity, understanding, beauty. We might start to paint art just for the sake of painting art, paint music for the self-expression, right? Exploration, traveling to new countries, breaking boundaries, transcendence, start meditating, understanding your own mindset, and play. The opposite of play is sometimes noted as power plays, trying to gain power. But this is play for the sake of being play. And I have no idea why a banana is in the frame. It could be play, could be art, who knows? Um, and this is where we start going from unconscious to conscious, right? We start changing from the parent child relationship to the adult relationship. And so this goes from the scarcity that we looked at, from the self esteem, all the way from the psychological, right? You can understand how this is unconscious because we're chasing things like an animal, all the way to self actualization. When we try to self actualize, we go away from our animalistic nature and we start to be as a human being. We start to understand ourselves as a human being. We start to go slow. Everything starts to come a bit in perspective. We get a deeper sense of understanding of morality and beauty, simplicity, right? And you can also see that in older people or wise people. And you can also see that in kids as well, who like play and exploration mode. And we're going to explain that. We're going to explore that more in depth psychologically for you to really understand how we can move from the scarcity to the abundance, and how being in that abundant state, being in the self actualization state, can also trickle down all the way down to the psychological, and how we can actually change our mindset through all of these states. And so it may not be necessary that we have to keep chasing, these food, these social needs, these self-esteem needs. So now that we've covered Maslow's hierarchy, I just want to quickly show you how these needs change over time and recognize where you are in this. Okay, so I don't know if I can do this. Yes, I can. So hello, you can see me as well. So if you look here to the far left, you'll see it says needs intensity, right? On the y-axis. X-axis is personal development. So green is that psychological needs, but you'll see that as we achieve this over time, you're going to find that they're going to start peaking off, plateauing, and that self actualization goes up. But when we get to that self actualization on the right hand side, all the other ones start going down. And what we find is that self actualization can actually pour in to the other needs, right? So that's a good graph for you to understand how in your life, when you start to go to the self actualization area, you can start being a bit more conscious, and these other things start to tailor off. And now I just want to take it to the South Asian context, because in previous generations, they might actually have a ghost, right? A ghost of the past, of the physiological and safety needs. And even though that you might have met these physiological and safety needs, right, here, and self-esteem needs, these could still be playing unconsciously, right? And we are not able to get this self-actualization because we're playing this game of chasing, like the rat race, like the hamster wheel, like the animal. we're still going to be chasing up and down, up and down. We're going to be chasing money. We're going to be chasing unhealthy relationships for affection. We're going to be chasing, trying to have more prestige. We're going to be chasing food, like our biscuits and stuff. And we're going to be like, why am I keep eating these biscuits and why can't I break free? Because they're all occurring unconsciously, right? And so let's delve into the psychology of how can we go from the unconscious scarcity to the conscious abundance? How do we do that? How do we gain mastery over what we eat? How do we gain mastery over not wasting time and then regretting it? About chasing money all the time, chasing unhealthy relationships, stuck in a loop of, arguing all the time, and stuck in a loop of trying to achieve things when they're not giving us fulfillment. So I shared an Instagram story about this nurse saying about the five top things people say before they die. It's like, I wish I expressed my thoughts and feelings more. I wished I did more about what I wanted to do and cared about less what other people want. And things like, I wish, you know, I didn't work so hard, and there was some other two more points. But this is very important. So let us now delve into a bit more deeper. I'm sure you'll be interested. I've shared before the ego states in transactional analysis, right? Transactional analysis is by a psychologist called Eric Bernay, and we've got the parent state, we've got the adult state, we've got the child state. Parent and child can be split into positive and negative at the top, and can also be split into two parts. So the parent can be split into critical and nurturing, and the child can be adaptive and free. So just take a moment to take in this model. Parent and child is unconscious, an adult is conscious. So it's important that we try to understand this and think about, as I go through this, think about your relationship to your parents, think about your relationships if you have children, and think about how you talk to yourself, your self talk. And I'll show you how this links into the abundant and scarcity mindset, how we go about thinking about money, our jobs, our all relationships that we have, and relationship with food as well, right? So parent, very briefly, critical parent. So this can be advising, informing, ordering, guiding. I think you should do this. I think you should do that. The parent can come in critically. Why are you doing that? You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You're not good enough. Punishing, condescending. You get the point. And if that's bringing back any memories, the parent negative part can also be influenced by the parent's parent, as it were. Okay, so that can be influenced, and that can take on unconsciously, and that can project. Parent, positive, nurturing, protective, warm, supportive, loving, encouraging. You're doing really well. Oh, you're doing great. Keep going. Parent, negative. Oh, don't do that. Don't do this. You might hurt yourself. Oh no, you shouldn't do this. Over stifling. What's the child going to be? It's going to be restricted. It's going to be suppressed. So it's important to understand it here. The different parts, the four parts of the parent, positive and negative, and the adult. The adult's coming in consciously, and the adult can play an adult, but also it can play a parent consciously, right? So when an adult is playing a parent role, it's never going to be a unconscious parent. It's always going to be a conscious parent. And next we have child. Child again, adapted to the situation. So positive. Please, can I do this? Oh, do you mind if I do this? Asking permission. So you might notice in your life that you're maybe constantly asking permission, but this can be positive, in a polite way. But if it's negative, asking permission, dejected, defiant, helpless, manipulative, right? Because it's going to try to get its own way without meeting the needs of the outside world or confronting the needs. Positive child. It's excited, playful, fun, creative, curious, loving, animated. It's on the beach. It's going to make a sandcastle. It's going to be creative in doing that. However, the negative child, petulant, destructive, wants its own way. It's going to go about knocking the other child's sandcastles. Or in a business setting, think about how that can play out. In the relationship setting, think about how that can play out, right? So now think about one person's parent adult child and another a person's parent adult child, and think about the transactions. If it's unconscious, these can happen, right? It can start to become in a scarcity mindset where you're going to start transacting certain conversations between people, and they might turn very unconscious and very negative. And we have to spot the patterns. We don't necessarily have to know what happened in that person's childhood and what caused them to get to that state, but it's helpful to know whether that person's in the parent mode, whether that person's in the child mode, and how to bring them into an adult state. And even more important is to see whether we are in the parent or child mode and how we can get ourselves to the adult state. And maybe we can see, oh, I sound like my mom or dad here, right? So just take a moment if you to take this screen in and to really understand. I know it's a bit abstract, but really try to understand places in your life where you've been the critical parent, or you've heard the critical parent in a positive or negative way, or you've heard this in a nurturing way, or you've experienced the adapted child-free way. When an adult comes in, an adult says that's not quite right, and it's being very conscious, what you'll find is that's a cross transaction. And if someone's been very critical and in an angry state, they can't really interact with the adult. And so that's a cross transaction. And what we'll find is that when you're coming into a situation and someone's very angry and you're just listening to them and not responding, that person can't really respond to you unless they come into an adult state. So that's also something worth noting. So let's do something a bit different now. And now let's see how transactional analysis, the parent, adult, child, can now fit into Maslow's hierarchy and can help you in developing a abundant mindset in your life. So I'm going to stop sharing. Hello. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Say hello to Mr. Whiteboard. I hope you can see it okay. All right. So I'm going to lift my chair a bit. Hope you can still hear me. So I know this is a bit back to front, but that says parent, that says child. And we're going to do like a South Asian example, right? So we've got our parent, adult, child. Remember, you've got conscious, adult, and you've got these two as unconscious. So for example, we're going to take a common South Asian example, right? But this can happen across you can replay it to your childhood or watching other people. But this is a common example, right? So a parent might come in. This is an unhealthy standpoint. A parent might come in from their parent as a negative critical and might say to the child, "You're not good enough. You never achieved so and so at school. Then they might say, you're not good enough, you're too lazy, you're not studying very hard, you know, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. You get the idea. It's going to be strengthening this negative relationship. And the child at the time is very young, could be, 8 to 16 years old, you know. So that's at school, maybe his body weight, like you're too fat or skinny, judgmental. You look like this, you look like that. Um, you should have applied for this job. You know, imagine these, if you're South Asian or anyone else, like you're not allowed to go to this friend, or could be in the smothering parent. I'm too scared for you to go here. You can't travel there, you can't travel here. And over time, you see this thickening, right? Of course, there's many, many other transactions. There could be a very, the parent could even come from a child to child standpoint, right? Um, in certain occasions, like if the parent's playing with the child. But we're going to just distill this into a more unconscious situation here. So basically what comes out of here is a child internalizing this as I'm not good enough, right? I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough. And so you can see how this child, after 16 years of age, so now it's going to be 16 plus, um, it's from these body image, from these like Maslow's hierarchy um, views of I'm not good enough, not achieving in life, and this is all coming from a parent relationship. And now what happens is, even when the child grows older and that, say, it moves away, the problem is the child is not able to get very conscious. So imagine it moves into a relationship, work relationship setting. That adult is not grown yet, because imagine that parent has kept the child in this relationship. The child has not been able to develop their adult. And so what happens is that child has an internal monologue. And so their parent is going to start telling it. Imagine when they look at themselves in the mirror, or they experience some other judgment coming in from another person who's not a parent, they're going to tell themselves, I'm not good enough, you know? Um, I'm not, I don't have any self worth. I'm powerless, I'm trapped. And they're going to have this internal monologue, right? Of shame, of guilt to their inner child. And this actually can come physically in the form of knots in the stomach, and can start to affect the immune system as well. So this all becomes internal. And then, if this adult is not grown up enough, this child can actually start doing this to other people, right? They can start, so you can see how this can have a scarcity mindset effect, because now in the Maslow's hierarchy, right, what happens is that we're going to be constantly saying that I'm not good enough. I'm going to fulfill my needs with trying to eat all these, biscuits to make me feel better. I'm going to try to earn lots amount of money to make me feel better, to meet that parent who said I'm not good enough. That's actually become my internal parent, right? I'm going to start trying harder and harder, even if I'm like in a work toxic relationship, or another relationship, because I'm not good enough. I'm going to keep trying to meet your needs. Or again, in a success way, I'm going to try to become number one, because I'm not good enough if I don't. So all of these unconsciousness, from I'm not good enough, trying to eat things that are not um, that are not healthy for you, or security, or relationships, or achievements, can all come from all the way from the past. So you can see this link between Maslow's hierarchy. So you can start to see this is not an abundant mindset. This is a scarcity mindset. This is a mindset that is based on shame, is based on fear, is based on guilt, and it's also based on blaming, right? And this is a very, again, simplified example, but I want to just break down the streams of the subconscious, how internal dialogue can be created from the external world. And so people can start, this can actually become a collective thought, but we won't get into that. We can get into that later, another video. But this is all happening in an individual. And so how to break out of this, how to start to become, how to start to become um, here, right? Is to realize that when you start to grow your adult, growing your adult is linked, growing your adult is linked to self actualization. Because I'm going to put this away now because it's annoying me. But growing your adult is linked to the self actualization, right? So remember, we had the adult and we had the self actualization on the top. So when we grow our adult and when we start to realize the unconsciousness, when we start to make contact with our inner child, whether that be through meditation, whether that be through just noticing when that's occurring or noticing critical thoughts in our head, we can start to shift and we can start to realize at that top of that um, triangle, when we start to play more, rewire outside of our work, we start to do things we enjoy, we start to create art, music, we start to express ourselves, look the way we want to look, be the way we want to be, but not just looking the way we want to look, or spending the way we want to spend from an unconscious state, but consciously. So we're not rebelling like a child, and we're not trying to control the way we look, or set a sense of control in the world, but just without anybody's expressions or opinions dictating, we're able to naturally, from a kind, wholehearted place, an authentic place, we're able to express ourselves from that self-actualization point. And when we make that change from abundance, from giving rather than taking, we can actually start to self-actualize and be the person we want to be, right? Because we are doing what naturally we want to do rather than chasing things like an animal. And all of these things at the bottom of the pyramid was all chasing like an animal. And so, for example, when I was at university doing a lot of internships and things, or even like university courses, I would hide a lot of, it was more scarcity mindset. So hiding a lot of opportunities because I would want to pursue these opportunities, right? But it wasn't until I talked to my sister a bit more and understanding now that I'm working, actually getting knowledge and sharing opportunities with other people actually makes it come back to you, right? So it's not about being reserved, it's about giving and giving and giving, and that's the abundant mindset. But you have to work in order to get to that stage. And what happens is, in the South Asian context, because um, the immigrant generation has come from that psychological needs, that pioneer generation, and they've basically tried to work their way from that psychological state. For example, if they weren't in that self actualization state, and then their children are being raised. And for example, me, I've never really, our generation has never really got to that stage where we had to fend for ourselves, for our food, for our security, what can happen is from previous generations which worked super hard, and which amazingly, with their grit and determination, worked their way up. But what can happen is psychologically is that we can still carry these scarcity mindsets and fear mindsets that can limit us from being self-actualization. So when we can make that transition, we could still be working in fear, and we can still be chasing money or chasing psychological safety through money as well. So I'm just trying to gather my thoughts how I want to end this. But hopefully that was useful. I know it was half an hour. So the thing I just want to end is that when we get to the top of the self-actualization pyramid, this starts to trickle all the way down. So it's going to affect how we chase our achievements. It will totally reframe. We won't be chasing achievements on the outside anymore, but maybe we'll be chasing mastery and things that are meaningful to us. We will be seeking relationships not for the love or attention of others, but we'll be loving people for who they are and not wanting the love and attention to fill a hole in us. We won't be seeking big houses, and well, maybe we might, but if we're into that, but we won't be trying to keep up with people in big car and big houses just for some feeling of validation. And we won't be chasing money for psychological safety, but we'll just try to live within our means, right? And again, we won't be unconsciously trying to be like like gluttony or kicking ourselves from eating things that we didn't want to eat, but instead, because we've got to this aspect, because we've got to the conscious aspect, because we've got to the adult and realized all the games going on, the games people play, that's the book this is based on, all the games going on from the childhood or from the ego, we realize that from growing our adult, from watching all these happen, we can start to be at the abundant mindset, and we can start to trickle all these way down for conscious eating, conscious earning and conscious living, conscious relationships, conscious mastery, and conscious play. And everything becomes more and more and more conscious. This is the theory, again, to know this truth, and to realize all these patterns is good, but then to actually go about life and try to be conscious in our conversations and the way we eat and the way we earn and the way we go about doing our jobs is very difficult, but it's all practice. And so I just wanted to share that with you. um, Maslow's hierarchy, transactional analysis, how technically our childhoods can affect from a certain standpoint, in this case South Asian. You can extrapolate that um, from to your life, but really how this can affect. So if you want to know about growing your adult, shifting to really the abundant mindset, personality package in the description box. Do these free personality tests at your own pace. Really try to understand yourself. Try to master your motivations with the Enneagram test. Try to understand your communication style with the Myers-Briggs test, and where your cognitive functions are lying, how you go about seeing the world, where your genius zone is. Try to do the Big Five personality test. And I've got another via strengths test as well. They're all in that personality package. It can help you reflect where your adult is coming from and can help you go into that abundant mindset. And if you want a free strategy session to talk about this stuff and talk about your life situation, maybe you're in a career, you want to job craft, you want to make a career more meaningful to you, and you want to go slow to go far, feel free to book. I'll leave a link in the description below. So that's it, everybody. I hope you found this super useful. I enjoyed it. Next time I'll put my whiteboard up on the wall so I'm not carrying it. But that was super fun. 35 minutes again, same as yesterday. But I hope you're all going to have a lovely day ahead. Keep calm, keep grounded. Remember, go slow to go far. And feel free to leave in the comments as well what you enjoyed about this, what you want to learn next time. And I'll see everybody next time. Bye bye, everybody.